Hello, Elite members. How are you all doing today? Here's another roster review, especially for you. Before we go any further here, you can use the link below to submit your roster to also be reviewed here. Who knows? Maybe it'll be on next week. So today, we've got Dave McLeod's Dark Angel army. He submitted a Ravenwing, a very Ravenwing heavy army. And I think it's really cool. I love the way that it plays and stuff. So let's have a look what's in the list. So part one. What's in the list? First of all, we have a patrol detachment. This patrol detachment has a Talon Master in there, just a regular Talon Master. Then it also has Ezekiel in there, who has got Mindworm, which is the fight last power. And he's got Engulfing Fear, which is the one that turns units' objective secured ability off, which is huge in the game right now. And then he's also got Righteous Repugnance, which of course is full rerolls to hit and wound for a unit in combat. Very powerful. Then we've got a unit of 5 infiltrators to take up the troop slot in the patrol. Makes it free. And then we've got 2 company veterans. And we've got... No, sorry, it doesn't make it free. Patrol. What am I talking about? Cost 2 CP. And then... well, basically, it makes it cost 2 instead of having to take another detachment, which would cost 3 CPs. So the infiltrator is quite nice there. Got a unit of 2 company veterans. And then there are 2 units of 3 attack bikes. Each one has got 2 multi-melters and 1 heavy bolter in there. And then we've got an outrider detachment. And the outrider detachment, of course, as you can tell, is full of bikes. Full of bikes. We have a Primaris Chaplain. Now, he's the Warlord. So he is a Master of Sanctity, Primaris Chaplain on a bike, meaning that he's got the Wise Orator Warlord trait. And of course, their 1 CP has been paid to double up his Warlord traits and give him Fury of the Lion, which is a 6-inch aura of +1 strength, as long as he also charges. He's got Catechism of Fire, which is +1 to wound with ranged weapons, Exhortation of Rage, which is +1 to wound with melee weapons, and the Litany of Hate, which gives reroll hits in combat as an aura. So proper tooled up there. Then we've got a Talon Master who has got the Arbiter's Gaze, which means he always hits on 2s, including when firing Overwatch, and he always ignores cover too. Then we've got a unit of 5 Ravenwing Black Knights, because they're amazing. They hit hard, they can move before the game, they can double move, their shooting's incredible, and their combat can be made very good by all the buffs we will talk about in a minute. Then we've also got a Chief Ravenwing Apothecary. Chief Ravenwing Apothecary. He's just on his bike, running around, faster than any other apothecary. Look at him. Beast. And yeah, of course, as you know, he's got the Selfless Healer Warlord trait, because you'd always take that. And then he's got the Reliquary of the Repentant, which is a Dark Angel relic. And basically, if you are within 3 inches of him, enemy units within 3 inches of him, when they take their invulnerable saves, they can only be 5 up invulnerables at best. So if your enemy has got a 3 up invulnerable and he drives up next to them, they've now only got a 5 up invulnerable essentially, which is amazing considering the things that are in the meta right now, especially when you've got things like Magnus or the Lord of Change floating around that both got 3 up invulnerables. Well, no, they're 5 ups now. And then you've got Mortarion is one of the biggest threats in the game right now, and he's got a 4 up invulnerable. You nerf that to a 5 up invulnerable as well. I think he's just very, very powerful. If you want to hit one target and take it down, you just bomb him up next to that target and then target it with everything. Then on top of that, you have 2 units of 5 normal bikers, because they're objective secured in an outrider detachment, because obviously everything's Ravenwing, so they're objective secured, they can move really fast and steal people's objectives. Then we've got a unit of 3 outriders, pretty much for the same reason, and also we've got a unit of 3 attack bikes, another unit of 3 attack bikes with 1 heavy bolter and 2 multi-melters. So there are 3 units of attack bikes in the army, 3 units of 3 with 2 multi-melters in each one. A lot of anti-tank there too. Right, that's the list. Let's have a look at how it works. So how it works, everyone. Well, it looks cool. That's why it works for me, because it looks cool. But let's have a look at how it all functions properly. So the aim is to use all of the bike squads, the objective secured bike squads, to run around stealing your opponent's objectives off them with the help of Ezekiel and his power to rob units of objective secured. So you stop your opponent's units being objective secured, and then you move all of your bikes on there really quickly to steal the objectives off them. What that does is it denies them primaries very well, and it also helps probably along with your secondaries if you've taken things like domination, which the army is very good at doing. So, having a unit like that can just catapult the board and steal five primary points off your opponent is amazing. And if you can do that 3 turns in a row, you've stole 15 points off them. They're basically not going to max their primaries, which is great. So that's what they're in the list for. Then, of course, if your opponent chooses to deal with the objective secured units, you've got the counterpunch of the Black Knights there, who can be very, very powerful. Now, you can, you can pre-game move them if you want to, and then you can also, hit and run with them. You've got a stratagem called Swift Strike, which means you go in there, you make your attacks, and after making your attacks, you can move before your opponent can hit you. It's basically instead of consolidating. So you can do that, and that makes them very strong. Great counterpunch. And then if your opponent decides to go for them and the attack bikes and stuff like that, then your objective secured bikes are just running around playing the mission unhindered, which again is perfectly what you want. On top of that, then, you've got your Chaplain and you've got the Righteous Repugnance power from Ezekiel. So if you cast those on the Black Knights, if you do Exhortation of Rage on the Black Knights, so they've got +1 to wound in combat, then you cast Righteous Repugnance on them from Ezekiel, they will go in there, they will have full rerolls to hit by standing next to, from Righteous Repugnance, they'll have full rerolls to hit, then you've given them +1 to wound from the Chaplain, and they've got full rerolls to wound as well. So they're going to do a bucket ton of damage, especially because you can spend 2 CPs and you can do Adaptive Strategy, which activates all of the doctrines for the Black Knights. So they get the extra 3-inch move, but then they also get extra AP with shooting and extra AP with their combat. So they're going to be absolute monsters, and they will really destroy sometimes people's whole armies, but they will destroy a lot of stuff. Then, of course, you've got the Infiltrator Squad. Now, the Infiltrator Squad is the perfect unit to sit back on your home field objective and just get you loads of primary points. And at the same time, they can do it reliably. You don't really have to worry about it because your opponent can't deep strike in and charge them. They're immune to deep strike charge threats because you have to deep strike 12 inches away from them when you come in. So your opponent comes 12 away and they cannot declare a charge against you. So they're a very good unit to sit on your home field objective and score you a bucket tons of points, basically. Then on top of that, of course, you've got the 2 company veterans. Now, the 2 company veterans just want to hide somewhere, possibly in a different quarter to the infiltrators, just to help with something like engagement on fronts, or they can be hidden on an objective somewhere to get you domination, or, help towards domination, things like that. They're basically a 40-point unit of we will score you a couple of points, which is quite a nice thing to have in your army. The Talon Masters provide some decent firepower, but of course they can go around with any unit they want on the board. You got your bikes, the Black Knights, they can all keep up with the Talon Masters. You don't often have it when a character moves very quick in an army, but also has the support of, shields around him, whereas this is one army where you can do that. And then the Talon Masters have got bucket tons of shots to help out with, but also they're no slouches in combat. And of course, you've got a strat where if an enemy unit is within 18 inches of a land speeder, which a Talon Master is, you can make other units +1 to hit against that. So that's very powerful too. Then, of course, you've got the 3 units of attack bikes. They're also just going to be whizzing around, shooting the bigger targets in your opponent's army with those multi-melters, and they're just very scary. Your opponent's not going to want to come out in the open with those going around. And I love the ablative guy in the attack bike squads. Of course, there's one guy just with a heavy bolter, and he's going to be the first one to die. But then you've got the Apothecary to give him 6 Infernal Pains, and the Apothecary will bring a bike back every turn as well. So they're very, very scary. The secondaries that you want to do with this army. So you can do Stubborn Defiance, of course, with those infiltrators just sitting at the back of the board, and they can't be deep strike charged, which makes them a great candidate to do that secondary for you. But if you're playing against an army that moves quick and has fast-moving Obsec, Guardsmen, Sisters, Drakari, Eldar, things like that, you might not want to take that secondary. And that's totally fine because those kind of armies have got multiple units, like loads and loads of units. So in that case, what you could do is you could take the Ravenwing specific one instead, where you get points for every unit you kill with a Ravenwing unit that moved more than 12 inches that turn, which is basically your whole army. So your whole army can contribute towards that secondary, meaning that those 2 secondaries, you can always take one of them in a game, basically, depending on what you're against. Then on top of that, you could take While We Stand We Fight. Now I do acknowledge that the Black Knights are probably going to die. So the Black Knights are probably going to die in every single game because they go in, they do damage for you, and then they get a target on their back because your opponent knows what they can do and they want to just get rid of them. But your other two are your 2 Talon Masters. Now your Talon Masters are characters, so they can't be shot if they're by other units. They're going to pick their fights. They can move really quickly. They can get out of harm's way. So they're perfect candidates for While We Stand We Fight. So you're probably going to lose 5 points, but you'll pretty much get a safe 10 points in every game from that secondary. Then your final one, Engage on all fronts and domination. This army does very, very well. As you can imagine, it moves very quickly and a lot of it is objective secured. So those secondaries are not a problem for this list. So either 1 out of domination or engage on all fronts, While We Stand We Fight, and then 1 out of the Ravenwing one or Stubborn Defiance. You can pretty much guarantee that you can take those in every single game. And that means you're not reliant on what your opponent brings to the table to score your points with, which is brilliant. The final things I want to mention there as well is there are a couple of other stratagems that are good. So those are the ones we mentioned for the Black Knights, but of course you've got hit and run warfare, which lets the unit fall back and shoot. That's perfect for the attack bikes if they ever get tied. If they get locked in combat and your opponent thinks they can't fall back and shoot, well, you can. For 1 command point, you can fall back with that unit and you can shoot. Now that's very scary, having multi-melters that your opponent can't tie down. It becomes a very big problem for them, and it's just something that you always have in the back of your mind as something you can use. Then also you've got Full Throttle, which is it lets a Ravenwing unit move twice. It's perfect for your regular bikers, Ravenwing bikers, because they're basically just going to steal your opponent's objectives like we talked about, but they can double move and steal your opponent's objectives. That's huge. That's absolutely massive. You can deny your opponent so many points by using that correctly. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about as well was a combo, and that is Skilled Riders and Transhuman. It's perfect for the Outriders. So if you advance with the Outriders, you can then use Skilled Riders. It makes them -1 to hit. Then they have a 4+ invulnerable save because they advance as well with Jink. And also if you use Transhuman, then they can only be wounded on a 4+. Now imagine that. They advance, they're -1 to hit, you can only wound them on a 4+, and then they have a 4+ invulnerable. They're deceptively hard to kill, especially if they're with the Apothecary and they've got the 6 Infernal Pain, and then he can bring 1 back and heal 1 3 wounds as well. So it makes them ridiculously tough for 2 CPs, and they're only 150 point unit. So that is how the list works in its entirety. Let's have a look at how we can tackle it. Okay, so tackling this army. There are a couple of things we can do. The first one is fast-moving combat units / counterpunch units. So the key thing here is, remember, the bikes are going to be coming in, stealing your objectives off you, and then the Black Knights are going to be set up to kind of like counterpunch for when you go for the bikes and stuff like that. Now, if you've got fast-moving combat units, you can possibly get past the objective secure units and into the Black Knights before they get a chance to hit you, or you have the threat to be able to do so, which deters your opponent. But if you've got fast-moving combat as well, what it means is if you send a unit in to deal with the objective secured unit and then the Black Knights come back and punch you, you'll have the speed to be able to get to them and also get them into combat. So if you've got fast-moving combat, that's what this army does not really like. Because you've also got to remember, yes, if you buff up the units, they become good at dealing damage, but they're buffs. So you're only going to have 1, maybe 2 units who'll get in those buffs. The rest won't. Imagine if you can get into attack bikes and you're moving that quickly, you will just rinse them. So those are the kind of units that you want to take in your army to be able to deal with something like this. Also, fast-moving screens. Now, the reason I say that is because you're normally going to have fast-moving combat or something fast-moving and cheap. Now, these fast-moving screens are probably the best way to deal with this army, because what this army wants to do, as we've just said, is move really fast, move really quickly, and move all over the board with objective secured units and steal all your objectives off you. Now, if you've got, say, a unit of 20 or 30 gaunts from Tyranids that you can move twice, you can go right up to these guys, Just stop like 5 inches away from them. No shenanigans can happen. Stop like 5 inches away from them with your entire army, and that means they're only going to move 4 inches forward next turn. Imagine that. You just go run up there with a unit of 30 gaunts. It's only cost you like 150 points. And you stop this entire army from moving for a whole turn. You know, you can do that with multiple units. You can do it with a unit of orcs that use dad jump. Yeah, it's 9 inches away. You have to land 9 inches away, but you land 9 inches away, and then they can only move 9 inches in their next turn. So this is an army that's moving 14 to 20 inches with everything in the army. So, you know, if you can make them move anything less than half speed, it's insane. So you can do that with things like that. Guardsmen, you can move guardsmen, get them in front of these kind of units and stop them from moving. And I really think that's the best way to beat this army. Another thing is hordes. If you've got hordes, I think you're pretty much golden. Yes, there's a fair few shots. There's a fair few shots. But what it does mean is the multi-melters and stuff are rendered useless. There's 500 points. And that ties in with my next thing. So you've got hordes and also not taking big models. Not taking big models in your army. You know, not taking a tank or an Imperial Knight like as a single one that your opponent can single out. Because that renders 500 points of the army useless when the attack bites of the multi-melters aren't doing anything. And yeah, I mean, against the hordes, yeah, there's a few bolters, and they've got a lot of attacks in combat, and then you've got the 2 talent masters, which is a fair amount of support. But that's never going to rinse like 150 to 180 model horde. And you've got to also remember, most hordes have got a big combat element to them. So if you charge in there with Black Knights and you do some damage, and you say even kill a unit of 30 boys, the next unit that's right behind them is just going to go in there and pick up all of your unit, which is incredible for the orcs. I think that's a brilliant trade, you know. 30 boys for 5 Black Knights. It's about level on points, but you've only got 1 Black Knight unit in your army. And there's probably 3 or 4 squads of 30 boys in the other army. So they're coming out on top in that sense. Termagants. You go in against Termagants, you charge them. You go in, you do a lot of damage. They're fearless. They can have a 5 of pain with Catalyst. And then they've got like 3 shots a model. So after that, you know, the other 3 squads of like gaunts are going to fire 90 shots each at your army. And thing is, you've just got 3 up saves. You've just got 3 up saves everywhere. So you will go down. You will go down. So I think hordes are a great way of doing it. And the last thing I want to say is mortal wounds. Because everything in this army is so elite, mortal wounds would really hurt it. Imagine an orc bomber flying over and then doing flying headbutt, killing a bike from like 3 different squads and putting multiple attack bikes and outriders down to 1 wound each and hurting the characters. It's just massive. And then the second one comes over and kills what the first one didn't kill. So, you know, I think mortal wounds are great. Thousand Suns can really hurt this army, you know, with that one sorcerer that can check out 10 to 12 mortal wounds. Armies like Drakari can really hurt it with the Hellions that can move over and do mortal wounds. Loads of mortal wounds, man. If you got a way of pumping out 10 plus mortal wounds in a turn, this army will really struggle against that. So those are a few ways that I would tackle this army. Let's have a look at modifications. Okay, so modifying the list then. Now, I really like the list. I quite like the list. I like the way that it works and the way that it synergizes with each other. The only thing I would do, so I would make 1 modification to it. I would possibly drop 2 to 3 bikers from the squads. You know, like drop one or drop like 2 bikers from one squad, 1 bike from another squad, something like that. Across the 2 bike squads that are in the army. Drop a couple of bikes. And what that lets you do is upgrade a unit of 3 attack bikes to a second unit of 5 Black Knights. And I think it just gives you so many more options, because then you've got 2 units of bikes like you had before, just slightly smaller, but they're just doing the same job, running forward, stealing objectives for you. You've now got 2 units of attack bikes instead of 3. So if somebody brings something big to the table, you're not wasting as many points. You know, they don't render as many points in your army useless as they would do if they didn't when you've got 3 units of attack bikes. So you just got 2 units of attack bikes, very powerful still. But like I say, it doesn't render them useless. And also they're very powerful at what they do. So they've still got 2 multi-melters in there per squad. But what you can do is you can up that to 3 per squad then. So you can have 3 multi-melters and 3 multi-melters. And you've got the same damage output. So that's definitely what I would do. And then what you've got is you've got 2 units of 5 Black Knights. And that's very powerful. And you've got to think, you've dropped 2 or 3 bikes, from squads that their only job is to go for and steal objectives. They can do that with minimum size squads. That's fine. That doesn't really matter. And then you've taken a unit that's got 2 multi-melters in it away for another unit of 5 Black Knights, essentially. I think that's a brilliant trade. The Black Knights will offer so much more than a 3rd unit of attack bikes. I think that's definitely a brilliant modification to make to the army. Other than that, I think it's brilliant. Well thought out list by Dave. I think it works incredibly well. So if you're a Ravenwing fan, try it out, guys. And also, like I said at the very start, the link is down below. If you want to submit your list, please feel free. And I take the, the juiciest, spiciest one, and I always roster review it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. And hopefully I'll be seeing your list being emailed to me very soon. And until the next roster review, guys, see you later.